Hello, I'm Catherine Curry-Williams.
And I'm Robin Radin.
And this is Wine, Women, and Chocolate Podcast. Welcome.
Yes, and today we are joined by
Andrew Moore and Anjie Moore.
And they run the tasting room for Lucas and Lewellen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. We're happy to be here. Absolutely.
Before we sort of get into all of the delicious wines that we have out here, can you tell us a little bit about your story? Because you share a last name, and we would love for our audience to know how you two came to be.
And are you married? Because I need something to do with toast.
Yes, we love toast. Yes.
So I can have a sip.
We are married.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
So that's why we have to start off with a...
A little bubbles never hurts.
Never, especially rosé bubbles.
Indeed.
Okay.
Yes. Do you want to tell that story, madame?
Tell a little bit of the story, Angie.
Well, I started working for Lucas and Lewellen in my late 20s. My the original founder of Lucas and Lewellen was Royce Llewellyn, and he was my mother's stepfather. And so when he got it started, he hired my mother, who was the first employee at Lucas and Lewellen, and then she hired me to do the writing and some of the early setup stuff in a small winery that was small back then. And 4 months later, she hired this guy in the tasting room. And I remember when he came on board, he's English, so he was very austere and uptight and sarcastic. And I remember telling the staff, I don't know if this is going to work out.
Only words that a wife could say about
Exactly.
Right.
I'm not sure about him. And I was still not sure about him for several years. And several years later, we were married. He made me sure about him.
Yeah,
right.
There you go. Well,
Wow.
And we were married in my little village church back in the UK in 2015. And then we immediately honeymooned in Paris,
Yes.
well,
which was okay.
And
Let's
now
drink
you
to
live
that.
Drink to
together.
that.
Okay.
Yes.
Love to honeymoon in Paris.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yes.
right.
Okay. Do you want
Cheers.
to, we can cheers there and
That's
a
right.
honeymoon in Paris. So that, and then you continued to work together because you thought, okay,
Yeah.
I'll keep her close. He'll keep him close.
That's right. Got to keep them in line. Yeah,
That's right.
We should say that we are recording today's podcast, audio and video, in Toscana, which is the same place that we recorded episode 1.
Michele Macuso's Toscana in Solvang, California.
Yes.
And that takes us to one of my... I became familiar with this area about 17 years ago. And one of the first vineyards was in a vineyard, a tasting room. At that point, I didn't know so much of the differences. But my friend Monica Potter said, "Oh, Lucas and Lewellen, this is a wonderful place." And we were celebrating somebody's birthday. And we're like, okay, first stop with our limo. That was
That's
like,
right. I remember it.
yes, there
Yeah.
you go. And then I became a wine club member like immediately.
Years ago, yeah.
So
early on,
many years
yeah.
ago, because everything was wonderful. It wasn't just, you have a lot of selections of wine.
We do.
If you didn't like one thing, you could have another. If you wanted red, there's this array of reds. There's a library of reds. There's whites. That really surprised me. And of course, I've been a member for that long. And now...
What is it, 17 years or
Yeah.
so?
Yeah, about.
Something like that.
Yeah, well, I was just, I
You're
just
just a kid.
got my license to be able to drink.
Right.
So that's where. So the tasting room is right in the heart of Solvang, which no longer is the Dutch candle shop factories like you used to see, which were very quaint. There's still bakeries, but now there's 5-star restaurants and exquisite tasting rooms and coffee shops and so on. And so
It is evolving.
And
it has evolved. How has that changed for you? Because you were there you've been there
start.
since the beginning.
We opened in
shift.
2002, September of 02, and we got there in 02.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, we opened in July of 02. I got there in September. You were already there.
already there.
Yeah.
And so what brought you there? Because you're British. And so did you come straight from
and a
the
little uptight
UK?
now.
I came over in 1978, and I was in motor racing at the time, and worked for one of the F1 teams in Europe. So
Natural transition
Right.
to
yes.
drink.
Well, then we had a sports car team up at Laguna Seca, which is in Monterey. So I came over to work for the sports car team in the 78 season, and at the end of the season, I didn't go back.
And when you say you
So,
worked
yeah.
at that, what capacity?
I built the motors, built the engines for the,
Oh, my
for the race
goodness.
cars. And then I did that for a few more years, and then I became a stockbroker and did that for 16, 17 years. And then at the end of that, I said, I'm going to go do something, speaking from a stress point of view now, that's less likely to kill me. So I'm getting in the wine business, and that was about 22 years ago.
Wow.
23 years ago.
What a unnatural transition,
I know.
but a very
Yeah.
smart one, I would say. I would
Yeah.
really say that's a smart transition. But then to come to this area,
Yeah.
it's like people
Well-
don't know of this area still. If they haven't been here, I said, if you haven't been to Solvang in the last 5-6 years, you haven't really been to Solvang.
It's very
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Well, the whole valley has changed a lot. I mean, I've lived in the valley for 25 years or so.
Well, what
and-
brought you here?
Well, the kids were little. You know, Catherine knows Patrick and Nick, and they were little. We wanted some more room for the kids to grow up. You know, we lived in Santa Barbara, and it wasn't a whole lot of
Okay.
space. So we came over the mountain and found a lot more space for
Yeah.
a lot less money.
Yeah.
Back then.
Back then.
Not
sure.
now, but back then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if you're thinking of moving to Solvang or the San Ynez Valley, do it now. Don't wait, because I did 6 years
Things
ago.
have
and
changed
we-
a lot.
Yeah, I'm
So
glad I
by-
did
Done
that.
very well, yeah.
Managing the tasting room, then you can probably tell us a bit about the history of the vineyard.
Well, yeah, Louis Lucas, who's the grower, it's Lucas and Lewellen. Louis Lucas is the grower. He's been growing grapes here since 1970. Planted the first commercial vineyard in the county in 1970.
That's a big one.
And prior to 1996, that's all we did. We grew grapes and sold them to everyone else. We've sold grapes to everyone you could ever name over the years, and still do. We still sell about half the crop to other people.
If
Really?
you drive down the 101, you see Lucas and Lewellen, you see signs. Now you'll become aware of it because they're.
Yeah,
You go
we've got
far.
about 400 acres scattered around the valley in 3 different locations. Royce Llewellyn, a longtime friend of Louis, and they became business partners in 1996. Formed Lucas and Llewellyn, and started making our own wine.
Okay.
And making really good wine.
Thank you.
And Royce passed away last August, unfortunately, and now his son Mike runs the show, and Louis is still growing the grapes.
And Louis, why do they call him Dirt Man?
The dirt
That's
man.
his own self-proclaimed title. He loves the dirt, and he's always dirty. His car is dirty, and his boots are dirty because he's out there all the
He's
time.
out there.
Yeah,
He's
he
the
absolutely is.
winemaker.
And
He's
they
not
have
the
special-
winemaker.
He's the
We
wine-
have a lady winemaker who's been with us for.
That's the woman in this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah,
Megan is-
she's so busy. It'd be great to have her here, but we stick her with 25 different varieties, and she makes 40-something wines just for us, and
Wow.
then wines for other clients that we have. She's the busiest winemaker in the county. I think probably inarguably.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's her name? Let's give a shout
Megan
out.
McGrath Gates. Yeah, she's very good at what she does. Perfect nose and very pure varietal focus.
Been with us
she-
for, what, 14 years, maybe?
No longer. I want to say it was her first vintage was 2006.
Okay. So,
15.
15 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It's
That's what-
2022.
Yeah,
Right, okay,
15,
yeah.
16 years. yeah.
16.
Yeah.
Wow, it's 2022.
Yes, it is.
Well, talk about different varietals. When did you get into bubbles?
We started making bubbles in 2000. It was our first vintage.
And I never went back.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Tell us
explain,
You like our bubbles.
yeah, explain
Yes, I
to
like
our listeners, and to me, what is the difference in the grapes that how do you choose the grapes for sparkling wine versus the grapes for
Well, there are traditional grapes that are the most commonly used to make sparkling, and that is usually Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
okay,
Okay, so the two Lucas Llewellyn champagnes we have here are, one is 80% Pinot Noir and one is and 20% Chardonnay. The other one is all Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
So in Burgundy, where they actually make champagne,
Right.
Those are the principal grapes for making champagne. But you, in theory, can make champagne out of anything.
And
Okay.
you use the traditional method as they do in France.
We do use the
as well.
tradition. It's true traditional champagne method. Yeah, absolutely. This one, the Toscana one, is 95% champagne, 2% Malvasia Bianca, which is an Italian white grape.
So when you say champagne, the grape is called champagne?
the grape is from Champagne.
We can't call it champagne.
We
no.
cannot call
Yeah,
it champagne.
sparkling.
We can call it champagne, but we can't put it on the label.
Right. Okay. So the grapes
Only
are-
champagne can be called champagne that comes from the Champagne region
Region.
of France.
So
So we have to
Toscana
call
is
it
the
sparkling
second
wine.
label that Lucas and Llewellyn has.
Yeah, Toccata is our second label. That's
Yes.
all of the Italian grapes.
Okay. And could you tell me the grapes again? Because
This one is Chardonnay, primarily, with a little bit of Malvasia Bianca and a little bit of Dolcetto. The Dolcetto is a red, so that gives it the little bit of color.
Okay.
And this pairs amazingly with Michele at Toscana's here, tiramisu. See that tiramisu over there? I'd like to just dive into it, but
It's so
I'm
good.
not going to
Yes,
dive
and Chef
into it.
Michele did, well, because one of the things we're going to be talking about in today's episode is pairing desserts with dessert wine.
Yes.
Because even the most knowledgeable wine drinkers really don't get into dessert wines, and they like their reds or they like their whites, but they
Dessert
don't
wines
really-
don't only have to be a Moscato, or I think that's what people think,
Right.
or I think I did.
Exactly.
My sisters thought so, like sweet wines, sauternes, and so on. Which that's not my favorite, although I will
Right.
have them. But I love having sparkling wines, of course, and we have port here too, which we'll talk about.
Probably what they drink Sauterne with in Bordeaux.
Yeah, that's an interesting little story. We were in Bordeaux 6 years ago, and we went to a Sauterne producer. And so we're drinking this very sweet dessert wine, essentially a dessert wine. So I said to one of the locals there, I said, "What do you guys eat with this stuff?" And they go, "Roast chicken."
Wow.
I go,
With a viscous,
What?
buttery, sweet, dessert wine.
I said, "Are you kidding me? Roast chicken?" He goes, "Absolutely. Yeah, roast chicken with Sauterne sweet wines."
It's like candy.
I know.
Well,
I never would have
We
thought of
tried
that.
it. I don't know.
We tried it. It wasn't our favorite. We said, "Yeah, we do it all the time."
That's their traditional.
That's their traditional
That's
thing.
interesting.
In Sauterne.
Wow, and that's the way to not have too much of it, not have a big hangover. You're having food with it.
Yeah.
Because by
Right.
the time I get to the Sauternes, and there was a time that I was learned about the botrytis grapes, and I was
Yeah.
very into it.
Sure.
And then that big hangover came
Yeah.
from being into it too much once, and then I was like, pivot. Okay,
Yeah.
so how about just having sparkling wines
Right.
as my
There you go.
dessert?
Exactly.
And ports, again, which are amazing. But I have to pivot right now the subject we're talking about this, because one thing that you do, maybe we'll be able to do a podcast on one of their wine cruises. They do.
Oh, that's
Tell us a little
right.
bit about Lucas and Lewellen does wine pairing cruises. That
We do.
I'll let Angie speak to that.
Anjie.
So we've been doing those, I would say, for about 15 years now. We're up to 2 to 3 wine trips a year. One of them includes a dude ranch in Arizona. In the spring, we bring 100 people to ride horses and play golf and go to the spa and drink a lot of wine. So they come and we join together at dinner, and then we do several tastings, and everyone gets to know each other, and they all have a lot in common anyway because they love wine. So we do that, and then we do 1 to 2 wine cruises. And this year we'll go with Alma Waterways to Bordeaux in July, and we'll celebrate Bastille Day. We have
Oh, so Alma is what I love is that these are small cruises.
small cruises, 100 and something people on the ship. They branched
Yeah.
off from Viking cruises, which you've probably heard of. And they do a really good job of allowing us to share our wines with everyone that's on their cruise ship along with our people. And they end up being new wine club members.
So you don't have to be a wine club member to
don't.
Not at all.
to join the cruise, but after you drink all the wine.
You usually
Right,
become
right.
one.
You
Yeah,
are.
we
Usually
usually
become
sucker you into the cult by the time we're done.
So you have to go to lucasandlewellen.com.
llwine.com/events to see the cruises. And then in October, we'll go with Oceana, which is a high-end ocean cruise line, and we'll go Lisbon to Rome. And that's
Through the Mediterranean.
that's going to be our biggest one ever. I think everyone's been
Wow.
locked down due to COVID, and they're ready to get out. So we have 125 people or something like that
Ready.
coming. It's
Yeah.
big.
Oh,
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been intending to do one, but I have not. And
know.
then the
We keep
COVID
trying,
year was
yeah.
my birthday, and it was going to be the 25th anniversary.
Right.
And then there was no cruises.
Yeah. I know.
We just did one in Germany back in August. And November, sorry.
August,
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
Either way.
It's close.
Time has no meaning.
It's a little chilly.
And with Alma Waterways, went from Luxembourg to Nuremberg on the Rhine and the Mosel. And the boat holds 150, 160 people. There were 33 people on the boat.
Yeah, with COVID stuff.
And
You know, it was right before
we were
Germany.
19 of them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. But I bet you that was an
Wow.
awesome.
Kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
you
might
had-
have, that was your
Small,
first.
A lot of
intimate
attention.
group.
Yeah.
Talk about, I
a
don't
lot
know.
of wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might
But
not.
we still had fun. It was great.
I would love to do
But
that.
interestingly enough, the wine never made it.
Well,
What do you mean?
We send wine over to serve, and we have to send it through
All kinds of customs.
the customs. Got stuck in customs in Bremerhaven, Germany, and never showed up.
Oh my
So
God.
we drank
still
a lot
there.
of German Riesling.
We still
Yeah.
go on off the boat and get a bunch of wine and bring it back.
Did you? So you scrambled and
We
you
had
got
to
wine,
improvise, yeah.
and everybody
absolutely.
drank. Well, was it great? Did you learn something about German wine?
We did. We definitely drank enough German Riesling.
We sure did.
Last us for
We
a
sure
long
did.
time. Yeah.
Well,
But we're panicking because we're saying, "Gosh, we've got a wine cruise."
No
What do we
way.
do?
No one.
Talk about
Well,
that.
I was going to ask you about the pandemic and how did that affect the tasting rooms? You know, you run 2 tasting rooms, right?
Yeah, we have 2 tasting rooms: Lucas and Lewellen, which is all the French varietals, and Toscana, which is all the Italian varietals. And
So, what did you do to pivot?
we shipped a lot of wine.
Yeah.
Shipped.
We've had 2 record years.
So
I've
day
heard
one-
that about
Record
a
years.
lot of wineries.
So but shelter at home meant
Yep.
drink at home.
Yeah, the interesting part is day one, I've told the story a lot, we shut down. And it was, remember, you didn't know if you could take your car and go to the store the first
Right.
couple days. You weren't sure what
You were
was
afraid
allowed.
to do
What
what
was
to
going
do
on,
with
yeah.
your dog.
Yeah.
Right.
So I remember Andy saying, this thing could go on for 2 weeks. We're
right.
gonna,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to go down and turn off we asked the staff to stay home. We're gonna have to go down and turn off the hot water heater. And he's there 6 days a week. I'm there 5 days a week. We're never not there. And I was like, this is so strange. I put on my pajamas, or it was in my pajamas, and we headed in. And we parked the car elsewhere and crept in case you'd get in trouble for going
Right.
into the office, and got into the tasting room in my pajamas, left all the lights off, and the phones were ringing. I mean, just nonstop.
Right,
And I was going,
day one.
should we answer? Because people will know we're here. And he goes, just start answering. And we start answering the phones. And it's, what do you mean you're closed? I need wine. I've got to have wine. Where's my wine? And Andy goes, sit down, turn on the lights. We never took a day off. And it was those days, March
crazy.
20 all the way to the end, were the busiest that we've ever seen. It was insane. But the
For
staff had to
orders.
stay home
Yeah.
because everybody had to stay away from each
So
other.
your pajamas, at least you were comfortable.
That's right.
Nobody saw me. Yeah.
Exactly right.
At least you were
I'm
comfortable.
sitting in my PJs.
Well, I was one of those phone calls.
Yeah.
I'm
I
like,
was going to say you.
Yeah.
because usually
One of those phone calls.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
come and pick up my wine, and during this time, like I can't go to Solvang. I have
Yeah.
to be here. So picking up my wine and can you ship it?
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we could ship
And we
it.
did, man.
I do a lot of the shipping myself, and in that first 2 or 3 months of the whole thing, I shipped more wine than I've ever shipped in 20 years.
Oh wow!
And we were over the top with it too, sanitizing all the boxes, spraying,
Right.
wiping down the bottles, and
Right.
it just
My
became
God.
this. Yeah.
Speaking about shipping, I'm glad you even agreed to come to be on the podcast, because recently my husband wanted to ship to all the Cortland alumni guys
Yes.
one bottle at a time. So I think he had 20, 30 individual one bottles that you had to ship for us. I'm thinking that the shipping was one at a time.
Now that was
Anjie
a
gonna-
small one. It was, I
One
think
bottle at a time.
Did Scott do half Takata, half Lucas and Lewellen?
I don't remember.
Might have been. Some of them did. So that's when you've got 2 invoices per order. But
yeah,
yeah,
no.
we
But,
appreciate you guys sharing us with your friends. It's
Well, they were thrilled. They got it before Thanksgiving, which we
Okay.
didn't. We said, don't worry about when, because all the individual addresses he had to send them to. So I'm like, okay.
They all made it, I think, right?
Yes, they all
Yeah,
made
they
it.
did.
And
Good.
Anjie,
Thumbs up from Scott,
and
yeah.
Angie's here with a smile. So thank you so much.
made it through the season. Yeah.
So it was actually really lucky then during the pandemic, because your business was really booming despite the fact that no one could come in person and do the tastings.
right.
And then, of course, what happened was eventually, when we did get reopened, the city closed down Copenhagen, and the ABC did some emergency
Right.
laws
Allowances.
to let us sit outside,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which was a godsend.
And do you still have that now? The
We
outdoor?
still have it, and it's been fabulous.
The city's looking for ways to keep it permanently. People
Right.
love being outside.
And what's lovely about it, is that they've closed off. I don't know how everybody feels about that, because it's a little less parking, but you're right next to a parking lot, which
Yeah.
is good.
Right.
They closed off the street so we can really
Walk around.
Yeah.
and then the farmers
Has a
market.
European feel to it.
It's
Yes.
very European feel.
Yeah, and you
And
can see the architecture now, which you really couldn't before. I worked down there and I was like, gosh, look how beautiful this place is.
Yeah.
It really
Walking
is.
down from the middle of the street, you can see that old Danish architecture.
It does feel so different
Yeah.
when you have every restaurant, every wine tasting room, every shop, and everybody's outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does have
It's
a
lovely.
special
Yeah.
feel,
Yeah.
and especially someplace where the temperature,
Right.
the climate is, it's really mild enough that even on a freezing day
Right.
of,
January,
60
yeah.
degrees.
Yeah.
A freezing day
Right.
of 60. I just got
Right.
back from
Here
New
in
York.
California.
A freezing day of, talking
Right.
about the Cortland alumni up at Cortland, we were on the phone with Rich Coyne, his one of the Cortland College's guys, and he was like, he just had a baby, we're congratulating him like this, and he was like, oh yeah, we're good, but it's -7 right
Right.
now, and our electricity went out for 20 hours.
No.
Right.
20,000 people lost their electricity, so it's
And
like
we're freezing.
I would die. I would
and
just bend
he
over
said
and
it
die.
only got to 60 in his house, and at that point they were going to go somewhere else, and they decided to his mother-in-law, and I keep on reminding myself now, okay, it's not cold. I'm just not wearing the right
Right,
gear.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm wearing a
That's
sweater.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
Right.
And
Right.
but,
And we're freezing and it's 60 and I'm
know.
going, I can't take it.
I know.
Oh, and yesterday it rained here. But because I sipped all my
Yes.
champagne, I'm thinking I'm going to have to
gotta
move to port.
Yes,
Something in
and,
her
and
Okay.
we do have to move
No.
on to some tastings.
Yes.
In terms of,
We
what
did
pairs with some chocolate.
We did this one already with the tiramisu, so now we're going to go talk port, a little bit
Okay,
of port.
let's do that.
And that's our
Right.
port over there.
For our video audience, they can see this, but for our audio audience, we have the Silver King Estate Vineyards. Is that correct?
Yes, Silver King Port. Now, interesting little story there is we are not allowed to call port.
Oh, we're not allowed to call
They've
port?
done with
So many
port
rules.
what they did with champagne.
Oh, is
They
that
did an
right?
agreement with the European Union about 15, 18 years ago, something like that, that said unless you're grandfathered in, which a lot of people are, you can't call port because we have to submit when we
Thank you.
produce a wine. We have to submit a submission to the BATF about the label, and they go through the whole thing and they say you can say this, you can't say that. They even go down to the size of the font you can use
Really?
Wow.
on the label, and we said we're going to call it Silver King Port. Silver King is a reference to Louis's father's grape label, because Louis Lucas's father grew grapes in the Central Valley, table grapes, and one of his labels was Silver King. So he said, I want to call it Silver King Port, in a tribute to my dad. So we said, okay, so we put that on that, and we submitted it to the ATF, and they said, you can't do that. You can't call it port.
Okay.
And we said, well, okay, well, can we call it port style? And they said, no.
Nope.
How about port like? No. And they said, what we finally came up with was, okay, we'll call it Silver King. We can keep that. You can put on the back label in small print, late harvest Merlot.
Oh, wow.
So how would
This
anybody
is
know?
wonderful,
You
by
wouldn't-
the way.
The bottle shape and
The
size.
bottle shape,
Yeah.
but unless,
So
yeah,
we're tasting this with chocolate.
yes.
So is that what you recommend?
Well, it's one of the things we recommend. Yeah, dark chocolate. This is the chocolate we have here is a Syrah sea salt chocolate and it's excellent. I always tell people, take a piece of chocolate, chew it up a little bit, keep some on your tongue, and drink the port over the top, and it's perfect. But also, we'd say to people, blue cheese, smelly blue cheese with port is fabulous.
Cigars.
If you're a
Cigars and
cigar
port.
type, yeah.
Of course, I've done that before. Stop. That was once. I had to gargle and wipe my tongue the whole night
Yeah.
long. In bed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Never again.
It sounded so cool. And that port was delicious,
Yeah.
but that cigar, well,
So this port is 19.5% alcohol. It's a fortified wine,
Strong.
which is fortified with brandy,
oh.
and it is about 11% sugar.
And so I'm not going to fall off my chair. 11% is lower sugar than I thought.
Can
or
be
is that
can be a lot higher,
Can
but
be a
it's,
lot.
it's kind of right in the middle.
What's a sauterne? How much sugar in a sauterne? A bit.
Again, it can be anywhere from 10 to 20%.
Okay.
a lot.
It depends who the maker is.
Now, I have a bottle that has a black label from...
The older.
The older one, yeah.
Yes, I have.
yeah.
It's not open yet or anything. So should I? Does that last?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
it
Should
wide
I be
like
drinking
this?
it?
Yeah, you should definitely always
It's not
drink
as
it.
wide as. It's not. I don't think this
It's
bottle
narrow?
is-
It's a 375. Yeah, this one's a 500. The narrow ones are 375.
Not really tall and narrow.
No.
It's kind of squatty.
Yeah.
But I think a little less circumference.
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious about the
Is that a
port.
good one? Should I?
It's
keep
good. Enjoy it. Yeah.
Ports should keep a long time.
That's exactly
Even-
what I
even
was
when
going to
they're
ask
open.
you.
Even
You
when they're
open a
open.
bottle of port, and
Even
you
open.
just want to have a little sip, and then how long will it
Weeks.
keep?
Weeks.
Weeks.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. A lot of sugar in
You
there.
just have a
It'll
little
keep it.
sip, with your dessert, and then you
Yeah.
can put it away.
Yeah.
Because it does it's like a nice little buzz just from a sip. Or maybe that's because it's,
Well, that's 20%
noon.
alcohol.
Maybe because it's in the
daylight,
middle of the day. We
Yeah.
still haven't eaten much, and I
Yeah.
drank the champagne like
Right.
the sparkling wine. But Angie, and I have a couple of cat
Quickies.
That means questions that,
Okay.
off the top of your mind. Of course, these might not pertain to winemakers. Okay.
Well, sure they
if
do.
you have to give up one, wine or chocolate.
Oh, give up chocolate.
Yep.
Stick with the wine, keep
Yeah,
the
stick with the
chocolate.
wine. Yeah.
What's the first word that comes to your mind when we say wine?
Joy.
I love that.
This
All right,
is
cheers to
where
this.
myself and my wife digress. I like milk chocolate. She likes dark chocolate.
Oh.
That's whoops, sorry, made that loud sound. That's the question I always like to ask people: white, dark, or milk?
Yeah.
So now you're dark.
Yeah.
And your milk.
Interestingly enough, if you choose milk chocolate or dark chocolate, it tends to predispose you to choosing certain kinds of wines. So Andy will tend towards lighter wines that can be a little fruitier, and I tend towards the beefier, darker, bigger wines. Although I love Pinot, we both love Pinot, but
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. It's pretty universal what you lean towards if you prefer milk chocolate or dark chocolate. That's a whole other podcast.
My wife always says to me, milk chocolate is not really chocolate.
Well, white chocolate is not really
White chocolate is
That's
no.
his
And
favorite.
that's our favorite too.
I like white chocolate.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's, Lindt makes a good white chocolate. I'm a dark chocolate fan now. I used to think
Just
my
it's
mother
so much
drank
better for you.
My mother ate that dark chocolate, that bitter sweet chocolate, and I was like, ugh. It was like, why take away the joy? And I was like, white chocolate,
Yeah.
like with almonds in it.
It's a
It was so
dream.
creamy, it would melt in your mouth. And
Wait, we have
now
one more question.
I like it. Oh yes. Well, let's gonna.
We need to ask both of you, though. We'd like you to give sort of a shout out to one woman in your life who has helped to shape you to become the person that you are today.
I'll start. My mother. She is just a force, and she's
Force of nature.
Force of nature. That's what we call her. She comes into a room, you know she's there. But she is just faithful and honest, and she's one of those people that gives to everybody, and you would never know it. Like, she would walk in having given her shirts and her money to everybody, and she would never mention it because it's so natural to her. Hi, how you doing?
What's your mom's name?
Yeah.
Colleen. My mom's Colleen.
Colleen.
Yeah.
Colleen.
Colleen.
Cheers
Colleen
to
Thompson.
Colleen
Cheers to mom.
Thompson.
And Andy's mom, who's his age.
That's right.
And that's funny.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. Angie's mom is about 6 months older than me.
Yeah.
And who would you like to shout out to?
My wife. Absolutely. No question about that.
And she's helped to shape you into the person you
No
are
question.
today?
No question.
I think you've done a wonderful job. So here's to
Oh,
Angie.
thanks, you guys.
No,
Cheers
absolutely.
to you.
Cheers.
You guys.
There you
I
go.
love this.
Cheers. All right.
Port at lunchtime.
Port at lunchtime. And does port have legs? It looks like it.
Should
does
do.
it matter?
Should do.
viscous,
Absolutely.
yeah, a little bit
It's a
thicker.
very viscous wine, so yeah, should have
Look,
legs.
these bright lights that are
Yeah.
making us see little dots ahead helps you see the legs that
That's
are
right.
very beautiful.
Well, this has been a real episode of learning and drinking and deliciousness and joy.
And chocolate.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was so fantastic having you. And
Thank you.
Next week we have, for episode 3, we have Iris Rideau, who is the first Black woman in America to own a vineyard.
Yes,
So-
she's amazing.
Yes.
She's a glass ceiling breaker for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
And everyone here in the valley, as we call it, the valley.
Everyone
San
knows
Ynez.
her, right?
Yeah, everybody
Absolutely.
knows her and loves
Absolutely.
her because she set some standards of things for tasting
Sure
rooms.
did.
And so we'll give a cheers to her.
And cheers to you.
Cheers.
So
Thank you.
Lucas and Lewellen, L and W.
L&L.
L&L.
LLWine.com.
LLwine.com.